"Hey, Mom," asked little Johnny, "can you give me $20?" "Certainly not," answered his mother. "If you do," little Johnny went on, "I'll tell you what Dad said to the maid when you were at the beauty shop." His mother's ears perked up, and grabbing her purse, she handed over the money. "Well, what did he say?" "He said, 'Hey, Juanita, make sure you wash my socks tomorrow.'" Little Johnny watched, fascinated, as his mother gently rubbed cold cream on her face. "Why are you rubbing cold cream on your face, Mommy?" he asked. "To make myself beautiful," said his mother. A few minutes later, she began removing the cream with a tissue. "What's the matter?" asked little Johnny. "Giving up?" The small tourist hotel was buzzing with excitement about the afternoon wedding of a 95-year-old groom and his 23-year-old bride. The guests couldn't help but wonder how the wedding night would go, as the groom appeared quite frail, and his bride was a lively and vibrant young woman. Some even joked that the evening might be the end of him. But to everyone's surprise, the next morning it was the bride who descended the hotel's grand staircase. Slowly, carefully, clinging to the banister as if her life depended on it. Step by shaky step, she made her way to the hotel's shop counter. The clerk, alarmed by her appearance, asked, "Goodness, what happened to you? You look like you've been through a battle." The bride let out a weary groan and, barely able to speak, whispered, "He told me he'd been saving up for 70 years. I thought he meant his money." Little boy walks into kitchen and says to his dad, "Granny's got a prawn." His father asks what he means, and the little boy repeats, "Granny's got a prawn." His dad asks him to show him what he means, so he takes him into the living room and Granny's laid stark naked. The little boy points to her protruding clitoris and says, "Look, Granny's got a prawn." His dad tells him it's not a prawn, to which the little boy replies, "Well, it tastes like a prawn." A pharmacist comes back from his lunch break. He finds his assistant standing by a customer who seems very tense. "What's wrong with this man?" the pharmacist asks his assistant. "He has a terrible cough." The assistant replied, "And there was no cough medicine, so I prescribed him laxatives instead." The customer gives a soft groan as the pharmacist looks horrified. "You can't prescribe laxatives to treat a cough." "Well, of course you can," replied the assistant. "Look at the customer. He's far too scared to cough." Little Johnny gets caught playing doctor with the neighbor girl. Dad doesn't approve, thinking Johnny is on track to knock up a young teen in a few years. "Johnny, you know that girls have teeth down there. What, are you lying?" "Nope, you need to keep clear of that business, son." Years later in high school, Johnny starts dating a girl, but after some time, she starts wondering why Johnny hasn't tried to take things to the next level. "Johnny, are you attracted to me? We've been together for months and you haven't tried sleeping with me yet. Is something wrong?" Johnny replies, "When I was younger, my dad told me that girls have teeth, down there." "That's silly," she says. "Let me show you." So she starts to strip from the waist down. "See, no teeth?" Johnny, looking horrified, says, "Well, no wonder. Look at the state of your gums." A little boy was out in the yard helping his grandpa rake leaves. As they worked, the boy spotted a wiggly earthworm struggling to get back into its hole. "Grandpa," he said, "I bet I can get that worm back in there." Grandpa chuckled and said, "Son, I'll give you $5 if you can do it, but good luck, it's too squirmy and soft to fit." The boy ran inside and came back with a can of hairspray. He sprayed the worm gently until it stood stiff as a stick. Then, with great focus, he slid it right back into the hole. Grandpa was so impressed. He laughed and handed the boy $5. But it didn't end there. About 30 minutes later, Grandpa came back outside, handed the boy another $5 bill. The boy looked confused. "Grandpa, you already paid me." Grandpa winked. "That one's from Grandma." At the start of the English lesson, little Johnny's teacher spotted him with his hands clasped together in prayer. "What are you doing, Johnny?" she asked him. "My mom told me that I should always say a prayer before going to sleep," little Johnny replied. One day, I was out for a walk with my 4-year-old daughter when she spotted something on the ground and immediately tried to put it in her mouth. I quickly took it away and gently asked her not to do that. "Why not?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "Because it's been on the ground, and you don't know where it's been. It's dirty and probably covered in germs," I explained. She paused for a moment, looking at me with wide-eyed admiration. Then, with pure awe, she said, "Mommy, how do you know all this stuff? You're so smart." Thinking on my feet, I smiled and said, "All moms know these things. It's part of the mommy test. You have to pass it, or they won't let you become a mommy." We walked quietly for a few minutes as she processed this new bit of wisdom. Suddenly, her face lit up with realization. "Oh, I get it," she said excitedly. "If you don't pass the test, then you have to be the daddy." "Exactly," I replied, unable to hold back a grin. A mother of 3 and a lawyer are sitting next to each other on a flight. The lawyer insists they play a game where they ask each other questions. If the mom doesn't know the answer, she pays him $5. If he doesn't know the answer, he owes her $500. Intrigued, the mom agrees, thinking this will be quick. The lawyer asks the first question, "What's the distance from the Earth to the Moon?" Without missing a beat, the mom pulls out phone and hands it to him. Now it's her turn. She asks, "What goes up a hill with 3 legs and comes down with 4 legs?" The lawyer, confident at first, spends the next hour Googling, emailing colleagues, and even searching the Library of Congress. But no answer. Frustrated, he finally hands her $500. She thanks him, takes the $500 and goes back to sleep. The lawyer, still perplexed, wakes her up. "Well, what's the answer?" Without a word, the mom pulls out $5 from her purse and hands it to him. Moral of the story: don't mess with a mom who's trying to nap. She's always one step ahead. 3 women escape from a penitentiary: a brunette, a redhead, and a blonde. They run for miles and finally come to a barn. They decide to hide in some potato sacks. An hour later, a sheriff and his deputy arrive at the barn. The sheriff tells his deputy to check the sacks. He kicks the first sack with the brunette in it. "Bow! Wow!" says the brunette. "There's a puppy in this one," says the deputy. So he kicks the second sack, which the redhead is hiding in. "Meow," says the redhead. "Sheriff, there's a kitty in this one." So he goes to the third sack with the blonde and kicks the sack. And nothing. So he kicks it a second time. The blonde replies, "Potatoes." Little Johnny was sitting on the pavement, stuffing all of his Halloween candy into his mouth. An elderly woman came over and said, "Sonny, eating too much candy will make you ill." "My grandpa lived to be 100, he replied. "Wow, but did he eat 20 candy bars in a single sitting?" "Nope," replied Johnny, "but he minded his own darn business." One day, there was a 14-year-old girl in a nice short skirt. A boy, about 16, walked up to her and said, "I bet you can't climb that tree." The girl replied, "Oh, yes, I can. Watch." The girl climbed up the tree, and the boy looked up her skirt. When she came down, he said, "I like your knickers." The girl got upset and told her mum. Her mum said, "You silly girl, you let him look up your skirt to see your knickers." The next day, the girl wore an even shorter skirt. The boy said to her, again, "I bet you can't climb that tree," pointing to a taller one. The girl climbed it, and when she came down, the boy never said nothing. He just looked very happy. The girl told her mum again. Her mum said, "You silly girl, you showed him your knickers again." The girl replied, "No, I tricked him this time. I didn't wear any." A young man was so paranoid about the size of his cough that he could never work up the courage to have love. Then one day, he fell in love with a nurse. One fine evening, they went back to her place. She put on some soft music and led him into the bedroom. Totally mortified, he told her of his problem. "Don't worry," she said. "I'm a nurse. I won't laugh." Blushing, the man drops his trousers. "It's okay," she said. "I've seen lots smaller than that." "Really?" the relieved man asked. She nodded. "Yes," she chuckled. "I used to work in the maternity unit." Mr. Smith comes to his wife. "Honey, could you be sewing on a wee button that's come off of my fly? I cannot button my pants." "Oh dear, I've got me hands in the dishpan. Go up the stairs and see if Mrs. Jones could be helping you with it." About 5 minutes later, there's a terrible crash, a bang, a bit of yelling, and the sound of a body falling down the stairs. Walking back in the door with a blackened eye and a bloody nose comes Mr. Smith. Mrs. Smith looks at him and says, "My God, what happened to you? Did you ask her like I told you?" "Yeah," says Mr. Smith. "I asked her to sew on the wee button and she did. Everything was going fine, but when she bent on to bite off the wee thread, Mr. Jones walked in." The science teacher stood in the front of the class and said, "Children, if you could have one raw material in the world, what would it be?" Little Stevie raised his hand and said, "I would want gold, because gold is worth a lot of money, and I could buy a Corvette." The teacher nodded, and then she called on little Susie. Little Susie said, "I would want platinum, because platinum is worth more than gold, and I could buy a Porsche." The teacher smiled, and then she called on little Johnny. Little Johnny stood up and said, "I would want silicone." The teacher said, "Silicone? Why silicone, little Johnny?" "Because my mom has 2 bags of the stuff, and you should see all the sports cars outside our house." A man walked into a supermarket with his zipper down. A female checker walked up to him and said, "Your barracks door is open," not a phrase that men normally use. He went on his way, looking a bit puzzled. When he was just about done shopping, a man came up and said, "Your fly is open." He zipped up and finished his shopping. At the checkout, he intentionally got in the line where the girl was that told him about his barracks door. He was planning to have a little fun with her, so when he reached the counter, he said, "When you saw my barracks door open, did you see a soldier standing in there at attention?" The girl thought for a moment and said, No, I didn't. But I saw a disabled veteran sitting on a couple of old duffel bags." A man returns home a day early from a business trip. It's after midnight. While en route home, he asks the cabbie if he would be a witness. The man suspects his wife is having an affair and he wants to catch her in the act. For $100, the cabbie agrees. Quietly arriving home, the husband and cabbie tiptoe into the bedroom. The husband switches on the lights, yanks the blanket back, and there is his wife in bed with another man. The husband puts a gun to the naked man's head. The wife shouts, "Don't do it! I lied when I told you I inherited money. He paid for the Corvette I gave you. He paid for our new cabin cruiser. He paid for your season Pittsburgh Steelers tickets. He paid for our house at the lake. He paid for our country club membership, and he even pays the monthly dues." Shaking his head from side to side, the husband lowers the gun. He looks over at the cabbie and says, "What would you do?" The cabbie replies, "I'd cover his ass with that blanket before he catches cold." A male motorist is in court in front of a judge. The judge hears the charges, hears the evidence, and gives his judgment. He fines the motorist £1,000 and disqualifies him from driving for 12 months for his motoring offences. The motorist then goes up into the public area of the court. The next case is a choir master charged with interfering with his choir boys. The judge hears the charges, hears the evidence, and gives his verdict. He fines the choir master £50 and tells him not to do it again. On that, the motorist shouts out, "You must be joking!" The judge replies, "I have heard that choir sing, they needed Little Johnny was starting his first day at a new school, and his father called the teacher to tell her that little Johnny was a big gambler. She said that it was no problem, and she has seen worse than that. After little Johnny's first day at his new school, his father called the teacher to see how it went. She said, "I think I broke his gambling." The father asked how, and she said, "He bet me 5 that I had a mole on my butt, so I pulled down my pants and won his money." "What?" said the father. "What's wrong?" the teacher asked. Little Johnny's father said, "This morning he bet me $100,000 he would see his teacher's butt before the day was over." A guy calls a company and orders their 5-day, 5 hours weight loss program. The next day there's a knock on the door, and there stands before him a voluptuous, athletic, 19-year-old babe dressed in nothing but a pair of Nike running shoes and a sign around her neck. She introduces herself as a representative of the weight loss company. The sign reads, "If you can catch me, you can have me." Without a second thought, he takes off after her. A few miles later, puffing and puffing, he finally gives up. The same girl shows up for the next 4 days, and the same thing happens. On the 5th day, he weighs himself and is delighted to find he has lost as promised. He calls the company and orders their 5-day ALBS program. The next day, there's a knock at the door, and there stands the most stunning, beautiful woman he has ever seen in his life. She is wearing nothing but Reebok running shoes and a sign around her neck that reads, "If you catch me, you can have me." Well, he's out the door after her like a shot. This girl is in excellent shape, and he does his best, but no such luck. So for the next 4 days, the same routine happens with him gradually getting in better and better shape. Much to his delight, on the 5th day, when he weighs himself, he discovers that he has lost another 10 tossles as promised. He decides to go for broke and calls the company to order the 7-day 25 program. "Are you sure?" asks the representative on the phone. "This is our most rigorous program." "Absolutely," he replies. "I haven't felt this good in years." The next day there's a knock at the door, and when he opens it he finds a huge, muscular guy standing there wearing nothing but pink running shoes and a sign around his neck that reads, "If I catch you, you are mine." He lost 33 kilos that week. One afternoon, a woman was in her backyard hanging laundry when a tired-looking dog wandered into the yard. The woman could tell from the dog's collar and well-fed belly that he had a home, but when she walked into the house, the dog followed her, sauntered down the hall, and fell asleep in a corner. An hour later, he went to the door, and the woman let him out. The next day, the dog was back. He resumed his position in the hallway and slept for an hour. This continued for several weeks. Curious, the woman finally pinned a note to his collar. "Every afternoon, your dog comes to my house for a nap." The next day, he arrived with a different note pinned to his collar. "We have 6 children." He's trying to catch up on his sleep. A plane is on the way to Toronto when a blonde in economy class gets up and moves to the first-class section and sits down. The flight attendant watches her do this and asks to see her ticket. She then tells the blonde that she paid for economy class and that she will have to sit in the back. The blonde replies, "I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm going to Toronto, and I'm staying right here." The flight attendant goes into the cockpit and tells the pilot and the co-pilot that there is a blonde bimbo sitting in first class that belongs in economy and won't move back to her seat. The co-pilot goes back to the blonde and tries to explain that because she only paid for economy, she will have to leave and return to her seat. The blonde replies, "I'm blonde, I'm beautiful, I'm going to Toronto, and I'm staying right here." The co-pilot tells the pilot that he probably should have the police waiting when they land to arrest this blonde woman who won't listen to reason. The pilot says, "You say she is a blonde? I'll handle this. I'm married to a blonde. I speak blonde." He goes back to the blonde and whispers in her ear, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry," and gets up and goes back to her seat in economy. The flight attendant and co-pilot are amazed and asked him what he said to make her move without any fuss. "I told her, first class isn't going to Toronto." Ed and his wife Norma go to the state fair every year. And every year Ed would say, "Norma, I'd like to ride in that helicopter." Norma always replied, "I know, Ed, but that helicopter ride is $50, and $50 is $50." One year, Ed and Norma went to the fair, and Ed said, "Norma, I'm 75 years old. If I don't ride that helicopter, I might never get another chance." To this, Norma replied, "Ed, that helicopter ride is $50, and $50 is $50, boss." The pilot overheard the couple and said, "Folks, I'll make you a deal. I'll take the both of you for a ride. If you can stay quiet for the entire ride and don't say a word, I won't charge you a penny. But if you say one word, it's $50. Ed and Norma agreed, and up they went. The pilot did all kinds of fancy maneuvers, but not a word was heard. He did his daredevil tricks over and over again, but still not a word. When they landed, the pilot turned to Ed and said, "By golly, I did everything I could to get you to yell out, but you didn't. I'm impressed." Ed replied, "Well, to tell you the truth, I almost said something when Norma fell out, but you know, $50 is $50." A young man walks onto the stage of Stars in Their Eyes, on crutches, with a plaster cast from his feet to his hips. Matthew Kelly introduces him as Simon. "It's very brave of you to come out here," says Matthew. "Please tell the audience what happened." "Well," replies Simon, "about a year ago, I was driving with my uncle when we had a really bad accident. Unfortunately, my uncle was killed outright, but I survived. I was trapped in the car for 6 hours before I was eventually cut free. The doctors had me in surgery for 12 hours, but they couldn't save my legs." "That's terrible. But I see you have legs now. Are they artificial?" asks Matthew. "No, Matthew. While I was in hospital, the doctors informed me that my uncle had in fact died, but that his legs were fine, and with all the advances in medical science, they could graft the bottom half of his body onto mine. As you can see, the operation was successful. I have been having physiotherapy for 6 months and hope to be walking fully again by the end of the year." A huge round of applause erupts from the audience. Kelly responds with, "That's an unbelievable story. So tonight, who are you going to be?" "Tonight, Matthew. I am going to be Simon and Halfunkel." A blonde woman, tired of being judged for her hair color, dyes it red and takes a scenic drive through the countryside. She spots a field full of sheep and pulls over, feeling bold. She walks up to the farmer and says, "If I can guess how many sheep you have, can I take one home?" The farmer smirks and replies, "Sure, but if you're wrong, I get a quickie." She narrows her eyes, looks over the field carefully, and confidently says, "5." The farmer's jaw drops. It's spot on. "Well, fair's fair," he says. She beams, picks up a fluffy animal, and heads back to her car. But just as she's opening the door, the farmer shouts, "Wait! If I can guess your real hair color, can I have my dog back?"